Hello and welcome to PD Solo Part 2. I'm Nancy Nealon, a Community Program Manager for the Parkinson's Foundation. A number of months ago, my colleague Jessica Barsh and I started to explore what we could do to address the needs of people with Parkinson's who live alone by choice or circumstance. We view this as an important part of our overall mission in serving the Parkinson's community. We brought together virtually over 20 individuals who live solo while living with PD. We asked questions and we listened. We took what you told us and did more research and worked to develop a whole new addition to PD Health at Home. A very heartfelt thank you to all who participated in the focus groups. We could not have gotten to where we are today without you. Some of the topics discussed in those groups were planning for the future, reducing isolation, making connections, cooking for one, daily tasks, and home safety. At our first webinar in March, our presenters talked about being alone but not lonely and reducing isolation. In addition, people also asked about advanced care planning, having an advanced care planning series. If you missed any of those, don't worry. They were all recorded, and we will include the links to all those recordings in our follow-up email to everyone who attends today. On that note, we share a lot of information during our webinars and know that can make it pretty difficult to take it all in at once. So please know that you won't miss anything today, as you will receive a follow-up email from us with a link to the recording, all of the slides, and all of the resources we're about to share. With that being said, we warmly welcome you to the webinar today, especially anyone who's joining us for the first time. I'd like to now share some important information with you before we introduce our presenters today. And if you are joining us for the first time, I'd like to take this opportunity to share with you the important mission of the Parkinson's Foundation. We make life better for people living with PD by improving care, advancing research towards a cure. We have everything you need to live better with Parkinson's. To achieve our mission, we pursue three goals: to improve care for everyone with Parkinson's, to advance research towards a cure, and to empower and educate our global community. And we do all of this by building on the energy, experience, and passion of our global Parkinson's community. The foundation has a vast number of resources available for you to take advantage of. Books and fact sheets, education events like today, and more, podcasts, and our hospitalization aware and care kit, centers of excellence throughout the country, and so much more. I encourage you to find out more by contacting our helpline at 1-800-4PD-INFO, when numerically that is 1-800-473-4636, and or visit our website, parkinson.org, to find out more. One really important example of our mission in action is our PD Generation initiative, PD Generation. This is one of the largest research projects launched by the foundation. Commit to helping us advance Parkinson's research today. Check your eligibility and enroll now to be part of PD Generation at parkinson.org/PD Generation, or you can call our helpline, the 1-800-4PD-INFO number as well. Another example of our mission in action is PF surveys. This effort is focused on capturing our community's perspective on a various number of topics in Parkinson's disease and living with PD, such as mental health and telehealth, to name just a couple. I encourage you to consider registering to participate to have your opinions count. By signing up for this initiative, we will email you up to 4 times per year, requesting that you complete a 10 to 20-minute survey. Your input is so vital and necessary for us to do our work to advance the mission. And I'd also like to encourage you to take advantage of the many, many programs we have under PD Health at Home. That includes Mindfulness Mondays, Wellness Wednesdays, like today, and Fitness Fridays. You can go to parkinson.org/PD Health to see everything that's upcoming, all the new programs, and we have recorded and archived everything we've done for the last 2.5 years, I think it is now. So there's lots to pick from. In addition to PD Health at Home, I wanted to also make you aware of another upcoming virtual program. On October 17th, we are bringing another program to the veteran community. Learn how a healthy lifestyle is an important part of living well with Parkinson's. This webinar will explore how exercise, dietary choices, stress management, sleep, and social connections can affect your brain health and PD care. Please visit parkinson.org/vets, VETS, -OCT for October to register for this event, or you can simply just contact me, Nancy Nealon, @parkinson.org for more information. I'd be happy to get you registered. We'd love to have you attend. With all that I've just shared with you, I want to reiterate, we are here for you. We have so much you can access. Learn all about what we have to offer to the Parkinson's community by visiting our website, parkinson.org, or calling or emailing our helpline, 1-800-4PD-INFO, and helpline @parkinson.org. Our helpline specialists are phenomenal people. I hope that you'll take advantage of that. And one last thing before I introduce our first speaker. As we were thinking about this webinar today and reflecting on some of the things and comments that people have shared with us from the PD Solo community, one over and over again is, how do I make connections? How can I reduce that isolation? And we thought this might be something you'd be interested in. So I invite you for your consideration to think about the fact that the Parkinson's Foundation hosts many events throughout the year that are perfect for meeting other people in the Parkinson's community. Today, I'm just going to focus on Moving Day. There are 18 Moving Day walks scheduled in the next 2 months across the country. Boston, Chicago, Atlanta, Miami, Raleigh, Tucson, and the list goes on. We are always looking for volunteers to help at these events in registration, handing out rewards. You could get involved that way. You could get involved by being on a team. You could be involved by just coming and participating. Moving Day is so much more than a walk. It is about community building. It is about movement, celebrating movement, and tons of community resources. So to find out if you live near an upcoming Moving Day, you can simply go to movingdaywalk.org, or you can call our helpline too. They'll be happy to tell you. I hope you think about taking advantage of this opportunity. So with that, moving right along to introducing our first guest, so happy to welcome Debbie Feldman. Debbie is an aging life care manager with over 30 years of experience working with older adults and their families to navigate the challenges of aging by helping them adjust, cope, and problem solve long-term care planning issues. She established her aging life care management company, Debra D. Feldman and Associates, in 1991. Debbie is a licensed clinical social worker, and she maintains her care management certification maintains her care management certification through the National Academy of Certified Care Managers. Debbie received her Master of Social Work from the University of Michigan and her bachelor's in psychology and sociology from Washington University in St. Louis. Debbie is currently serving as the president of the board of directors for the Aging Life Care Association and has been on the Aging Life Care Association's national board since 2018. Wow. Debbie, we are so happy to have you join us today. Thank you so much for being here and for what you are about to educate us on.
Nancy, thank you very much for the introduction. And I'm really excited today to talk with all of you about how home care can really benefit you and how to really access those services. Next slide. I'm just gonna, this is a brief kind of listing of programs or what I'm gonna be talking about today. And I wanna really start out about talking about what aging life care professionals are, which is what I do as a career. And we will talk about your daily needs, and I'll explain about the different types of home care agencies and programs that you can access. And really share with you questions to ask when you're interviewing a home care agency, as well as questions to ask when you're interviewing caregivers, and looking at really evaluating the qualities of the caregiver. Next. So I want to begin by sharing with you what aging life care professional, or who aging life care professionals are. We are credentialed, experienced professionals in the healthcare industry. And many of the care managers come to this career with backgrounds in social work, nursing, physical therapy, occupational therapy, even speech therapy. Some of our practitioners have a recreational therapy background, but all the backgrounds really are from the healthcare industry. And those of us that are members of the Aging Life Care Association, we have a strict code of ethics and standards of practice that we follow. And these things really help bring us to the forefront and really the leaders of this industry. Next. So aging life care professionals really we've really kind of broken it down into 8 knowledge areas, as you can see here. We are really expertise in financial situations, housing for older adults and their families, dealing with family dynamics, understand, and we are really great with local resources. We are really, I think of myself as the go-to to identify resources that will best meet my clients' needs. We are advocates for our clients in whatever situation that they find themselves in, whether they're in a senior community, in their own homes, helping them navigate the medical system, as well as even the legal system. We are familiar with the legal needs as far as making sure individuals have end-of-life documents in order, including healthcare, power of attorney, financial power of attorney, power of attorney for property, making sure people have wills in place, and really a full estate plan, because that's essential to have those things at your disposal. We're definitely available for crisis intervention and review health and disability, and are knowledgeable in those areas as well. Next. So aging life care professionals really provide professional support. We come in and we assess the needs of our clients. We help develop a plan of care. And as I mentioned, we really link to services. We help navigate the families and bring the families together, so everybody is focusing on what the needs are and how to best help the family member that's been identified. And we really assist with this crisis intervention. We also monitor our clients. Our clients are the older adult typically. We make sure that their needs are met. We make adjustments to the care plans to make sure that we're accommodating what the changes are that we're identifying. We keep our families informed so that they know what's going on with the older adult or the client. And we're really peace of mind for the family. As I mentioned, it's ongoing evaluation on an ongoing basis. Every time we see the client, we're making adjustments as needed. And we really coordinate care, finding the best solutions to help our clients meet their needs and have highest quality of life. Next. So aging life care professionals, you can find us throughout the country. AgingLifeCare.org is the main website to find a care manager in your local area. And you'll see this orange Find an Aging Life Care Expert button at the top of the website when you on the home page, and you can just click on that, put in if you have a city or a zip code, and you'll be able to find aging life care professionals in your area. Next. So most important, and why I'm really here today, is to really talk with you about home care. And one of the things that I encounter and hear the most, or when I start working with families, is that the hardest thing for all of us to do is to accept the fact that we need help. We're all very independent people. We truly hate, nobody really likes to ask for help or acknowledge the fact that we can't do certain things, activities for ourselves anymore. So that being said, although that's the hardest thing to do, the smartest thing is really to accept the fact that you can no longer perform certain tasks and to learn to ask for assistance. In the long run, you will not be so upset about no longer doing your own laundry. How fun to find clean clothes in your closet and drawers. And what a privilege to have someone to help with some of the menial tasks, to allow you, those of you with Parkinson's disease, to really be able to use your limited strength for more important daily tasks and enjoyment. Next. So let's talk about some of your needs. We've already discussed laundry and identified that as something that you could benefit assistance with, as well as daily house cleaning, not the necessarily moving of furniture and trying to dust underneath, but really just keeping the general home clean. And grocery shopping is another task that you may want assistance with. The really nice thing that COVID really shared with all of us is all of our abilities to access grocery shopping online. So that may be something that you'd prefer to do as opposed to maybe hiring a caregiver to help you with grocery shopping. I know even for myself, with some of my clients, I've gotten onto Instacart and really love using that service. It saves me a lot of time, and it's a really easy way to do grocery shopping. And then we have tasks such as cooking and dressing and grooming, showers and bathing. That's an area where we really might want just some supervision. Maybe you don't need so much help with the actual showering, but maybe getting in and out of the bathtub or in and out of stepping up over the ledge for in a shower. And safety is so important. Transportation, driving may start to become more difficult for you. And then I identified here like mail and bills and maintaining your finances. Those are tasks that get to be very difficult to do. And one of the, this is an area where you really don't want to have your care, if you're hiring a caregiver, you may not want the caregiver to actually get involved in your bills and see your bank accounts. So there's, and I apologize for not putting this up there, but there's an organization called the American Association of Daily Money Managers. And that is an organization where you can hire an individual to manage all of your bills and help you balance your checkbook. They are licensed and credentialed, and there's a national website where you can identify an individual that you reach out to and hire. You also may need some assistance with staying on top of medical care. scheduling appointments, follow-up appointments, medication management. Are you taking so many medications you need a pill box? And how can you get that pill box all set up? And sometimes that's just such a tedious task to do every day. And another thing too is that you want to maintain a calendar for fun and enjoyable activities, as well as, so that you're not always just dealing with your tasks. Don't lose sight on having fun and finding those things that really give you joy. I know that we can tend to get really caught up in our day-to-day. So think about what gives you joy and puts a smile on your face. Make a point to do something that gives you joy every day. And don't forget about companionship. That's really important as well. Socialization and getting together with friends and family and people that make you happy and you can really have fun interacting with. You'll also want to think about the skills that you'll need from your care provider. Do they have knowledge about Parkinson's? And what are their actual skill sets? And are they going to be able to provide you with the physical assistance that you may need? Next. Next, we need to think about, and another thing too, is to really think about how many hours of assistance you're going to need each day from a care provider. And that can really range from a few hours a day or a few hours a week to daily care, somebody assisting you for 24/7 care. When contacting home care agents, you'll want to know the activities that you would like the care provider to perform, the skill set required to safely care for you, the number of hours that you want, and whether you would prefer to work with a male or a female. An agency will ask you this information in order to make the best match. So I'm going to explain a little bit about the different types of agencies that are available to you. To begin with, they're licensed home care agents, and they provide non-medical care. The caregiver through a licensed home care agency is a W-2 employee of the agency. The agency is required to maintain human resource records, including complaints, certificate, payroll record. They will provide background checks, and they'll also include some driving background checks, especially if you're hiring somebody to be a driver for you. The employees are required, agencies are required to fingerprint their employees and update a record that's maintained on the state's Department of Public Health website. The agency is required to bond and insure their caregivers. They will provide workman's compensation for their employees, and the caregivers receive a minimum of 8 hours of training per year. The client, you would be paying the agency directly, not the caregiver. And sometimes if you have long-term care insurance or VA benefits, those benefits will cover the cost or part of the cost, depending upon what your benefit reimbursement is for these expenses. Sometimes you can ask the home care agency to help you with filing the paperwork to get long-term care insurance reimbursement. And the agency is also responsible for backup in the event the caregiver gets sick, injured, goes on vacation. Next. The agency will also, the home care agency will also provide ongoing supervision for the caregiver, and they serve as the point of contact for both the caregiver and the client. So if you have issues, you will identify who your point of contact is at the agency so that you can call them and share concerns that you have or changes that you need, requests possibly even about activities that the caregiver is doing. And always remember in hiring a caregiver that it's a two-way street. You want the caregiver to really enjoy working with you, as well as you really enjoying having that caregiver in your home and really enjoying working with that individual. Excuse me. So next I want to talk about placement agencies. Sometimes they're called registries. And in this situation, the caregiver is not an employee of the agency. However, the placement agency will identify caregivers, they will hire caregivers, or they'll identify, they'll have a roster of caregivers that they've run background checks on. And they really serve as a matchmaker for caregivers and clients. Often the caregiver will pay the agency 1 week salary, as well as the client will also be required to pay the agency a 1 week salary of the caregiver. And there's a contract that you sign. There's generally a guarantee for a match for 1 year. If during that year the caregiver, for whatever reason, doesn't work out, the agency is required to provide you with a new caregiver, and you do not pay additional fees. I would assume that the caregiver will have to pay their 1 week salary as well. In this situation, the caregiver becomes your employee. So you're responsible for payroll tax. You negotiate that, you discuss that. You pay them directly. You may want to get things like workman's compensation in case something were to happen. The placement agency, you can utilize them as a resource to provide backup in situations where there's a vacation or an emergency. Oftentimes the agency will be able to help support you and provide you with a caregiver. Next. And then the other option that you have is finding a caregiver on your own. Oftentimes, I will hear families where they've talked with friends of theirs, somebody has passed on, there's a caregiver that they knew of that is taking care of this individual that's available, and sometimes families will take advantage of that. In this situation, the caregiver is completely under your control. Nobody has done a background check. I would encourage you to identify or ask for references and make sure that you've done a thorough background reference check on them. Again, the employee or this individual becomes your employee, so you're responsible for all the payroll tax and workman's comp and payments and all of those things. It is typically less expensive to hire somebody private. Next. And lastly, within this, I wanted to really share with you, people get confused about the difference between a home health or home care agency and a home health care agency. And the home health care agencies are usually referred to you when you've been in the hospital, or maybe you need some more physical, you would like to get some more physical therapy and some occupational therapy, and you've talked with your physician, and they've suggested that that would be really beneficial for you. They will then place an order for you to get home health care. Typically, the way that starts is a nurse will come out, do an assessment. The visiting nurse may check in on you for an ongoing through the time that you're having these therapy and these medical assistance. And this is when you would have physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, if that's something that is desired by you and needed by you. But the home healthcare agency is covered through your Medicare and insurance, whereas home care agencies, when you're hiring caregivers, that's all strictly private pay. Or again, as I mentioned earlier, covered by long-term care insurance or VA benefits. Next. So here's some important questions and things to think about when you're hiring a home care agency. You want to know, and in hiring a home care agency, you're going to want to identify maybe 1 or 2 different agencies and meet the owners or meet the managers in the agency so that you're comfortable with the company that you're working with. So one of the first questions that you want to ask them is really try to identify, how do they recruit caregivers, and what are their hiring requirements? What kind of competencies are expected of the caregiver that you send to the home? And how do they assess what the caregiver is capable of doing? That's really important to me. If you need some physical assistance, do they know? And these are silly things, but really important and simple things as far as from my perspective. But does the caregiver even know how to fold up a wheelchair to be able to put your wheelchair in your car? Does the caregiver are they capable of folding up a walker? Have they used those? I've had caregivers where they don't know how to put the footrest on a wheelchair and have to be trained how to do that. These are things that ideally I would expect that the home care agency is taught the caregiver. You want to know that, as I mentioned earlier too, is when you're thinking about what kind of assistance that you are going to need, you want to make sure that the caregiver that they're sending out has experience in those areas. So also, does the caregiver undergo ongoing training, and what types of training are being provided? What is the policy for providing substitute caregivers if a regular caregiver cannot provide the contracted services, or the caregiver calls you or comes in and says, "Uh-oh, I've got a family emergency and I've got to leave the country, tomorrow." How is the home care agency going to introduce the caregiver, or the caregiver gets sick? It's really important to understand how they're going to substitute. And if you have dissatisfaction with a particular caregiver, will they substitute? Will you have an opportunity to interview some other potential caregivers? And how does the supervision actually take place? Or does that take place from the supervision from the home care agency? They're required to come out and supervise their caregivers, their employees. And so how do they do that supervision? Do they call on the telephone and talk with you? Do they are there progress notes that are kept in the home? And is that the way that the agency oversees and monitors care? Or do they actually come to the home and see you and talk with you and meet up with the caregiver and make sure that things are going smoothly? Next. So qualities that you want to look for in a caregiver. And these are things that are really important to you. Do they do so? And this is where I was talking about what kinds of assistance do you think that you need? Has this individual received training on Parkinson's disease and progression of the disease and how to work with somebody that has Parkinson's? You can certainly ask and make sure that the person's a non-smoker. And you really want to know whether or not you're comfortable with a female or a male, what your preference is for that. You may also want to have a sense of, how old is this individual? You may be uncomfortable having a 22-year-old walking in your home, or you may like working with somebody that's young like that and have that kind of energy. If you need somebody that's going to drive, you want to know that they have a valid driver's license and auto insurance. And oftentimes, and in many communities, I know particularly in the Chicagoland area, we have a lot of immigrants here, and sometimes their language and their English is not very good. And if it's very difficult or you're hard of hearing, for you to be able to understand somebody that's got a strong accent, this is something that you're going to want to think about. You also want to make sure that they have experience caring for older adults. You want to know that they actually are physically in good health, that they're able to lift if they need to. I was interviewing a caregiver a couple of years ago, and they needed to be able to provide stability and assistance to my client. And I watched this individual have difficulties walking down a flight of stairs. So I knew right then that if my client had to walk downstairs, if this caregiver wasn't going to be able to safely assist them. If cooking is important for you, you definitely want to know if they know how to cook. I encounter caregivers all the time where cooking is not their forte. They, have trouble making good dishes and healthy dishes, and so sometimes we have to order food in, or maybe it's providing them with several different cookbooks or recipes that you really like. You want to, when you're meeting the caregiver and interviewing them, you want to make sure that they can follow instructions well and speak well. You want somebody that's friendly, somebody that's warm and able to communicate with you and listens to you. And sometimes you really don't want somebody that's too talkative, standing over your shoulder and talking too much. Next. So when you're interviewing caregivers, and you definitely want to ask the home care agency for that opportunity. You don't want them to just try and match you up with somebody and bring them into your home. You really would like to have opportunities to interview the caregiver and meet them and see if you're comfortable. And ideally, you're going to ask the agency to bring you maybe 2 or 3 different possible candidates so that you can meet them and see who you feel most comfortable with. So some of the questions that you are going to want to ask are like, how long have you been working in the caregiving industry? And what kind of experiences have you had working with the older adults or somebody with Parkinson's? One of the questions I like to ask too is, what got you into this industry? Why did you decide to become a caregiver? What do you like about this kind of work? And I'd like to find out where they live and how they're going to travel to and from my client's home. And depending upon communities in the Chicagoland area, we've got winter, and I want to make sure that this individual, if we get hit with a snowstorm, and I really need to have this help, I want to make sure that they're going to be able to get to. You also want to know if there are going to be any conditions that would prevent them from doing what is really required from this assignment. Again, I know I've mentioned this before. If you need assistance with transferring, you want to know that that the caregiver has had experience with that, and really being able to lift. Ideally, caregivers aren't physically lifting you up off the floor, but if you were to fall, are they trained to be able to help guide you and help you get back onto your feet? You want to know if this individual is looking for a long-term assignment and what kind of hours they're really looking for, and if they're working with other clients at this time. An important thing that I always ask, even if they're working with an agency, is if it's possible for you to get letters of reference from them, and if you could actually contact some of their references. References are really great in sharing information about their experiences in working with that individual. So don't be shy about asking for that. And then what might be this individual's other commitments outside of work that may affect their availability to work with you? When is this individual ready and available to begin working with you? You can even ask them if they've had a criminal record. They'll hopefully be honest and share that information. And then I would also encourage you to ask about what that individual's expectation is of you and of the assignment. Next. Before I jump into thank you, I apologize for that. When I was talking with Nancy and getting prepared for this presentation, she had shared with me that on the Parkinson's website, there is a questions to ask a potential paid individual caregiver. And this is it's a 2-page document with places for you to answer questions and to fill in. I really encourage you to take a look at this. I know that Nancy will be sharing this with other things for those of you who are attending this workshop. So I want to thank you all for your time, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Debbie. That was so wonderful. And just to follow up on what you just said, yes, we will absolutely include not only all of the information you shared, but this other additional piece that is from the Parkinson.org website. So folks will have just a big variety of questions that you can think of what is most applicable for you in your situation. Everything has to be individualized, certainly. So at this time, we are going to switch gears, and I'd now like to introduce our second speaker today. And it is certainly my pleasure to introduce Lena Menkes. Lena is an occupational therapist at the Shirley Ryan AbilityLab, also in Chicago. She has been working inpatient in the Brain Innovation Center. Lena has also worked at the Lena has worked at the Shirley Ryan AbilityLab since 2019 and currently serves as the inpatient champion for the Parkinson's disease and movement disorders program. Lena received her doctorate in occupational therapy in 2017 from Washington University in St. Louis and spent the first year of her career working in a pediatric setting, both in school-based and early intervention therapies. Lena, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so happy to have you and can't wait to hear all you have to say and share with us about home safety.
Thank you so much, Nancy. And thank you all for having me here. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about home safety, and let's get into it. We can go to the next slide. So what are we going to talk about today? I'm first going to start by just telling you guys a little bit about what occupational therapy is. I know some of you may already be familiar with it, but I'll get a little bit more in depth with it and kind of how it relates to talking about home safety and what we might be doing working with individuals who have Parkinson's. After that, we're going to go through a home safety checklist. So we're going to kind of talk about some different, even go through a little bit room by room in the home, and then some general strategies as well for what are some ways to set up that room to be as safe as possible, and maybe some different equipment you might want to consider looking into that would increase safety in the home. And then after that, we are going to talk about home adaptations. So instead of kind of little pieces of equipment, talking about some larger renovations or adaptations that you may consider making to your environment either now or later down the line that will decrease risk of falls and kind of maintain that safety for a longer period of time. All right, next slide. So kind of talking about what occupational therapy is in general. When we talk about occupations, we're not talking necessarily about a job. By occupations, we mean meaningful activities. So we are helping individuals in general maintain independence and continue to do activities that are meaningful for them on a day-to-day basis. So that can be, I personally work in an inpatient setting in a hospital. So I will typically see someone after they've had some kind of more major medical event, an illness or a surgery or something like that. But occupational therapists also work in a large variety of settings. They work in outpatient clinics. They make home visits and do that home health occupational therapy that Debbie was talking about. And so we kind of are all over the place in that sense. So specifically working with Parkinson's, we want to help individuals with Parkinson's continue to participate in their desired occupations or activities. This includes maintaining independence with daily routines. So some of that involves kind of increasing the physical function, so strength, balance, coordination. Those are all things we work on. We also can help modify tasks and environments. So kind of instead of working only on physical skills, we also change the environment around us so that we can continue to have a safe environment to do those things. And then just a little bit of information if you are looking to locate an occupational therapist who specifically is familiar with Parkinson's. I have the Parkinson's Foundation helpline on here. That's that second point that I know is also in the chat, that 1-800-4PD-info. And then another website I have here is lsvtglobal.net. So LSVT, some of you may be familiar with this too, but it's basically a exercise-based program. There's a version for voice and there's a version for movement. And the goal is to do large amplitude-based movements or large amplitude-based voice. If it's specifically for individuals who are having difficulty with their voice in general, or physically with having kind of small movements, things like having a shuffling, walking, difficulty taking big enough steps. If posture is starting to become difficult, those are all things that LSVT helps address. So this website has a spot on it where you can specifically search for an LSVT certified therapist in your area. And you don't necessarily need to be working with one specifically certified in this to talk about home safety, but it could just be a good resource to start. Okay, you can go ahead to the next slide. So how does occupational therapy kind of address home safety? So we want to help prevent falls in the home as much as possible. Part of this is by doing actual evaluations of the home. We do this kind of in the home health setting, and it can also be like just an evaluation that's separate from home health therapy. And if this is something you're interested in doing, this does need to come from a referral from your physician. So talking to your primary care physician can be a really good place to start. They can make that referral to occupational therapy for you. Our goal with that is to provide recommendations to maintain a safe environment so that you can continue to engage in all of those meaningful occupations, kind of now in earlier stages of Parkinson's and across progression of the disease. So when we're thinking about home safety, we're thinking about how you are functioning now, but also what things might look like in 5 to 10 years. And part of this is recommending equipment that can help maintain that safety. Okay, next slide. So I'm going to start to go through the home safety checklist. I'm going to start with the bedroom. So one recommendation that is going to be helpful for most people is having a bed height that allows your feet to reach the floor when you're sitting on the edge of the bed. Having a bed that is too tall is going to make it more difficult to get in and out of bed when you're transferring, kind of more difficult to slip and have a fall when you're getting out of bed. This can especially be something challenging if you're someone who is getting up during the nighttime to use the bathroom. So making sure that, that's going to be a safe situation if you're getting up during the night is going to be really important. So some ways to kind of change that height of the bed are, some people will, if you don't want to get a whole separate bed, some people will take it off the box spring itself or have somebody help them do that. just to kind of have that lower height that's safer. Another really easy recommendation to kind of implement is having your phone and having a clock near the bed for easy access on like a nightstand or something like that, so that you're not having to kind of reach far places or search around during the night if that's something you're looking for, right? Because that's something that can increase your risk of having a fall. The next recommendation is utilizing some kind of nightlight or an easily accessible lamp that's near the bed. This is also another one for if you're using the bathroom during the night, you really want to have a clear pathway that's well lit so that you're able to see where you're going. And then a couple different pieces of equipment that you may want to consider using either now or in the future are a bed rail. So even if you don't have like a whole hospital bed, there are portable bed rails that can just be attached to a standard bed. This can be really helpful if to make sure you're not falling out of the bed during the night, if you're someone who moves around, or even if you need a little bit of extra support to transfer yourself to sitting up at the edge of the bed, or when you're standing out of bed, can be something sturdy to hold on to. And then the other piece of equipment to consider is having a bedside commode or using a urinal during the nighttime to go to the bathroom instead of kind of making that trip from the bed into the bathroom if, you know, balance and coordination are things that are starting to become a little bit more difficult. And as far as where to purchase equipment, I am going to talk about that a little bit later on in the slides. You can go to the next one. So next, I'm going to talk about bathroom, things in the bathroom for home safety. So one recommendation I pretty much make to every single person is to ensure that you have non-skid mats, both inside and outside of your tub and shower. Most falls that occur are happening in the bathroom just because you have these really slick surfaces. And if you're taking a shower, you're going to be wet, things are soapy. It's a really high risk time to have a fall. So it's really important to put these pieces of equipment in to kind of prevent that as much as possible. So purchasing non-skid mats. Another thing I usually recommend is having seating available by the sink if your bathroom has room to allow it. So this can be really helpful for if you're walking in and out of the bathroom and you aren't really able to make the whole trip, you can have a place where you can always rest if you need to. It can also be helpful to sit while you're doing different grooming tasks, like when you're putting on deodorant, when you're brushing your teeth, brushing your hair. You can have a place to sit, right? And you don't have to worry about balance and endurance at the same time that you're doing these things. And then thinking about equipment that you may want to be using in the bathroom, there's a really big variety out there, but here are just some kind of general suggestions. Having some kind of seat in the tub or shower. The picture I have here is called a tub transfer bench. And this is really helpful for if you have a tub. It eliminates the need to step over the edge of that tub. You kind of just sit on the edge and you can slide your legs over the edge while you're sitting. So I think that's a really helpful piece of equipment. Can really prevent falls that would happen getting in and out of the tub. If you have a walk-in shower, there's a variety of just standard shower chairs as well. There's options for just a little stool if you have a really small shower. They also have some with backrests, some with armrests. So lots of good seating options. And I also think besides just preventing falls, these are helpful for conserving energy, right? If you're someone who enjoys spending a little bit of time in the shower, having a place to sit can be helpful so that you're not using up your energy bank for the day. You're then able to have that energy for other things you want to do later on. The next recommendation I have for the bathroom is having grab bars in the shower and by the toilet if needed. So this is a really simple piece of equipment that can make a huge difference with safety and balance. There's a lot of different places they can go, but what I always recommend is using the ones that are kind of professionally installed. I don't typically recommend ones with suction cups just because they're really easy to accidentally rip out of the wall. And I also recommend that people are not relying on things like towel racks or the toilet paper holder for balance, because those are not meant to hold weight. So they're not something we want to have to rely on. And then the last piece of bathroom equipment I have listed here is having some kind of raised toilet seat or commode. This is not one that everybody's going to need, but sometimes it can become more difficult to stand up from a low height, especially if you're a taller person. So I know standard toilets can be a little bit low on the low side. So they make kind of really easy to put in pieces of equipment like this other picture I have. It raises the toilet seat sometimes about 6 inches, and this one has handles too that are attached. So it can be really helpful for increasing safety, getting on and off the toilet. You don't have to ever worry about kind of getting stuck there. And having something to reach back and hold on to, like that handle, can be a really safe option for kind of making that transfer too. Another option would be if you were using a bedside commode during the night, it could also be placed over the toilet to just add that extra height as well. Kind of the receptacle that goes underneath it can be easily removed, and it can just add a little bit of extra height for you. All right, you can go to the next slide. So here is some more of the home safety checklist. This is just not related to one specific room, but just general setup of your home. I know I already kind of talked about lighting in the bedroom, but having appropriate lighting everywhere is going to be really key to making sure you can see where you're going, which will help go a big way in preventing falls. Ensuring that walkways, so the hallways, anything you need to go through are going to be adequately sized. This can mean, right, you might need to move some furniture out of the way, making sure that you and any kind of mobility device that you're using is able to fit through that space. Next is removing throw rugs. So throw rugs are actually a huge cause of falls. Even just that little bit of extra height where the rug starts is a really easy thing to accidentally trip over. It's something easy to miss when you're walking, especially if you're using a cane or a walker with you. So I usually just recommend getting rid of them altogether and having hardwood or carpeted floors. Next is clearing clutter or any cords from your pathway when you're walking, right? Kind of similarly to having those adequately sized walkways. Just removing anything that you might accidentally trip over if you weren't looking down at your feet. The next one is having chairs, looking at the chairs that you're typically sitting on in your home, making sure they're stable. I usually don't recommend using chairs with wheeled bottoms, making sure they have armrests and that they're a height that you are able to easily stand up from. And then the last I have here is making sure furniture is secure and sturdy. You don't want to have any kind of furniture lightweight enough that you might accidentally tip it over if you were to put a hand on it for support. You can go to the next one. And then here I have a couple things related to home safety that are also kind of related to cognitive things as well, like your memory. So this first one is just kind of for falls in general for safety. Having some kind of emergency alert system is something that is worth looking into. Kind of the one I know everybody thinks of is like that Life Alert brand. Having some option that if you were to have a fall or you were to have an emergency in the home, that you'll have an easily accessible way to contact either a family member or 911. So there's a really large amount of different options for what these look like. You can see in the picture, there's like kind of a necklace version, something you'd wear around your neck. You could press a button easily. And that one's nice because it's kind of always with you. There's also buttons that can be installed on the wall. If you are going to have one, I always recommend having one in the bathroom. I also know that if you use a smartwatch, you can have fall detection added to them. So it can sense if you do have a fall and then can be programmed to alert somebody for you. So these are all kind of good options to think of just for that kind of worst case scenario. The next thing I have here that's just also related to general safety is getting regular exercise. So this is really important for making sure that our muscles are staying strong. We're working on balance regularly and that coordination so that we're less likely to kind of have a fall for any kind of physical reason. So regular exercise doesn't necessarily mean you're like going to the gym all the time. It could just mean you're taking regular walks, either by yourself or with somebody else if you need someone there for safety. There's also a lot of good kind of exercise programs you can follow. I don't have it listed on here, but if any of you have heard of Rock Steady Boxing, that is kind of like a national chain of exercise groups that is boxing specifically aimed at people who have Parkinson's. So I always love recommending that to people too. It's a great thing to do to maintain your exercise and also kind of a social outlet as well. The next thing I have on here is thinking about safety with taking your medications. So taking medications is something you might find that you're having kind of an increasing number of them. This is not something we want to be making mistakes with, right? So finding ways to make sure we're taking them at the right times, whether that's using some kind of medication organizer, like in that picture. There's a really big variety of types of organizers. There's also apps that you can get to a phone that will kind of give you an alert when it's time to take it. I know someone recently showed me a medication organizer that has a light that kind of goes off until you press a button to see that you've taken it. So a lot of really great options, kind of depending on what's going to work the best for you. And then keeping up with doctor's appointments is going to be a really kind of key recommendation for maintaining safety in the home, because they are going to be able to help make sure that your medications and things like your vision prescription are up to date and being monitored so that you're able to have glasses that are the right prescription, you're able to see where you're going, and you also, your medications are appropriate. They're not interacting with each other in a way you wouldn't want, because things like that can cause impairment in your cognition, right? You can have kind of a brain fog if that's happening, and that's not something we want, because we want to make sure we're clear so we can avoid falls in the home and be as safe as possible. And then I just have here like things like reminder signs, calendars, alarms. These are not really tied to any specific recommendation, but just another kind of low tech thing that you can be implementing to make sure you're not forgetting when things are and kind of maintaining safety that way. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So talking a little bit about specific renovations that you may want to consider. I know that these will not kind of be feasible or work for every single person, but things that you can consider. One is in the bathroom, having a completely barrier-free shower with slip-resistant flooring is ultimately going to be the safest option for getting in and out of the shower, kind of eliminating that threshold to get in altogether. I am going to have some pictures of these on the next slide as well. The next is creating more space in your hallways and kitchen to allow the option to kind of maneuver yourself through it with some kind of mobility device, whether that's a walker or it's a wheelchair. whatever is going to be the safest option for you to move around, you want to make sure you're able to access the things in your home that you want to while using that device. And then the last one is creating wider doorways to allow that use of that same mobility device. So kind of similar to that last point, but thinking about, right, a lot of bathrooms have narrow doorways. So if you're someone who would be moving around with a wheelchair, but you aren't able to get into your bathroom, you then have to kind of get out of that chair and walk into the bathroom, which may be creating a little bit of less of a safe environment. So these are all kind of things to consider. You can go to the next slide. And I've just got a few pictures here describing them. So this bottom one is the barrier-free shower. You can see there's really no threshold to enter. You'd be able to move right in with any kind of mobility device, which is really nice. This top left picture showing kind of a doorway being widened, so someone's able to enter it with a wheelchair really easily. It's not a tight squeeze. And then on the top right, it's showing somebody in kind of a really nicely accessible kitchen, which I love. I also really like that there's that open space at the bottom, so someone can even kind of wheel really close to the countertop. So if cooking would be safer from a seated position, this would be a really great option for that. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So here I have some different resources as far as where to begin looking at renovations or adaptations. This first site I have here is through the Shirley AbilityLab, where I work, and they have a really big list of resources. They go through kind of home modification contractors, vendors, and different financial resources for funding. So I think this is a really great place to start. Some of them are local to Chicago or the Midwest, but a lot of the resources on here are also national. So great place to begin looking. And then I've highlighted kind of just a couple of the resources they have on there. One is Lifeway Mobility. So I have the number and the website on here. And what they help with is they do bathroom modifications. So they can help make those shower changes. They also do ramps, stair lifts, and elevators. So if any of those are things that you are interested in, this would be a great resource to check out. And then the National Association of Home Builders is the other one. I also have their website and phone number here, and they have a directory of certified aging in place specialists. So if you are looking for someone to kind of help make those home modifications or kind of evaluate for it, you could also contact anybody on here who's kind of in your area. It could be a really good resource to start with. You can go to the next slide. So then talking about just kind of general equipment, not those big renovations, where would you want to go to purchase equipment? So there's a lot of options. Medical supply stores have many of these things. Even thinking about like Walgreens, Walmart, Target, a lot of them sell things like the shower chairs, the tub transfer benches. If you're looking for grab bars, I know those are things that people get at Home Depot sometimes. And Amazon is also a great resource for these things. If you are looking to get something really quickly, to look at reviews for different things, those are all great options. Sometimes these things are covered by Medicare. If it's prescribed by your doctor, it kind of is a case-by-case basis. So definitely, if these are things you're interested in, definitely bring it up with your physician as well. And then the other option for getting equipment is lending closets. So they do have a lot of different places where they have equipment where you can borrow it short-term and then return it. And I have two sites here that are examples of lending closets. They're both kind of specific to the Chicagoland area. But if it is something you're interested in, I always recommend Googling equipment lending closets near me, putting in your zip code, there's really a lot of different options. A lot of these are through schools, through churches. So there's generally going to be one that's kind of in the area, and they'll typically have a phone number so that you're able to call and you can kind of ask if they have specific equipment for you. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. So that is all I have for right now. Thank you all so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Lena, thank you so much for that very informative presentation and super practical, which I think are always the best presentations. And I want to invite Debbie back because we're going to be starting our Q&A. And quickly, I'll introduce myself. Nancy mentioned me in the beginning. I am her colleague, Jessica Barch, who helped develop this PD solo program. So just give me a moment here, guys, while I access these questions that some people submitted, and we will get this started in just a moment. All righty. All right. So Lena, I'm just going to go, the first question will be to you. What exercises can I do to improve balance?
Yeah, so it's kind of going to depend on a few things. It's hard for me to kind of give a blanket statement on what exercises are going to work for any specific person. But if kind of finding exercises to help with some of those things with Parkinson's is something you're interested in, I would definitely recommend looking in, maybe talking to your physician about it. They may be able to make a recommendation for either occupational therapy or physical therapy, who could definitely help with it. And I'm happy to also kind of send some resources for general community resources for exercise that's targeted towards Parkinson's as well.
That's perfect. Thank you. We'll also, like you said, include that in a follow-up. So that's great. Debbie, so there is a question is directed to you, and it says, can you give a little bit more information on the money managing organization that you talked about?
Sure. So they do have a national website, and I actually work with daily money managers for some of my clients, or will introduce somebody. It's oftentimes somebody with an accounting background or some sort of a finance background, but you can hire them to come in and go through your mail with you, your bills, help pay your bills, help set up your payments online if that works better. And they're licensed and have credentials to work as a daily money manager. So it's actually a specific career.
That's great. Thank you very much. And there was another question, and then we'll just kind of build on this. So again, for you, Debbie, who can help with medication management? Are there any organizations that are specific to medication management, or would that be more of the caregiver that you talked about when you interview for that?
So the caregivers, if they're with an agency, really are not allowed to help do your medication management.
Okay.
The medication boxes must be filled by an RN. There are some home care agencies will have an RN within their company that you can ask to come out on a weekly basis or a monthly basis to fill the pill boxes. And the caregivers can help not dispense them, but they can help remind you to take the medication. They can, like you can ask them, you could ask them to open, you could direct them, the caregiver, to open up a pill bottle for you, but you have to be able to direct them and then take the medication yourself.
Okay.
So it's really typically through the home care agencies or finding an RN to do that.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And, we've heard in the past at different programs, some people recommending that Amazon. Have you heard of that? How like you can set up your, Amazon has that company that you can set up your, medication with, and they like ship it to your house, make it easy to open, that sort of thing. It's like a daily regimen. I'm not sure if you've heard about that. I don't have a ton of knowledge on it, but It just sounded kind of like a unique way to kind of stay on top of your medication management as
There,
well.
there are also some pharmacies that will set that up for you. I know
Okay.
one of our local grocery stores, their pharmacy will bubble pack, like on a weekly basis, medications. Walgreens sometimes will do it. Sometimes you can talk with your local pharmacist if they're, if they have the time, or I have a Walgreens local that will fill one of my clients' pill boxes, but I don't find that that's universal. There are some companies out there, and I can do some research to get that for you, where they will bubble pack the medications and ship it to you.
That's
So there are
exactly.
some online pharmacies that will do that.
Okay.
The key to that is not having medicines that are changing all the time.
That makes sense. So if you're on the same regimen for a while, that could be
Correct.
something that would be beneficial. Lena, this goes to you. So I know you talked about, kind of structuring your home around reducing falls, but what are the best way to avoid falls? Like, I mean, do you really recommend not going to the bathroom in the middle of the night, or is it, really utilizing a commode, which some people might be a little hesitant, but are there any additional ways to avoid falls, or even exercise that could kind of help with that as well?
I would say there's not really one specific way to stop falls. It's kind of going to be that combination, right? You want to make sure you are exercising, because it's kind of a combination of your physical skills, but also setting up your home in a safe way. And as far as kind of like the difference between using a bedside commode versus kind of walking into the bathroom, that's kind of something that's going to be on an individualized basis, right? It's kind of going to be up to you and any loved ones to decide, like, this isn't as safe as it used to be. So I really need to kind of change up the structure of how I'm doing it to make sure I'm preventing falls at home.
Perfect. Thank you. Debbie, if I can't afford private pay help, what can I do? That's like the question of the year. I swear we get that question.
Yeah, it's a really difficult situation, because caregivers typically, it is all private pay, but there are some of the, I know in the Chicagoland area, and I can't speak to other cities, but I know in Chicago, through Catholic Charities, we have a community care program, and they will help provide caregivers at a reduced rate. And other than that, it's finding volunteers, maybe reaching out to your church or synagogue, and maybe there's some volunteers there that wouldn't be providing like a lot of the physical assistance, but the companionship and maybe some transportation, taking you to and from doctor's appointments. There may be some free resources out there for that. But I would look to, I know Catholic Charities is route, but or Lutheran Social Services sometimes. So I would try to, and you can reach out to your area agency on aging, and they would be able to help identify where you might be able to get some subsidized programs, or access those programs.
Okay, great. Thank you. Lena, can I get OT services even if I've never been hospitalized? Is it covered by health insurance?
You do not have to have been hospitalized to get OT services. That's just kind of the particular setting that I work in that we typically see people. But as far as getting services like through home health therapies or getting those home evaluations, you don't have to have been in the hospital, but you do need to get that referral from a physician first.
Okay. All right. Thank you for clearing that up. Debbie, lack of transportation is a big issue for many of us living with Parkinson's. What do you suggest? How can we find resources to get rides to medical appointments, grocery shopping, or just going out with friends?
Again, sometimes it's hiring the caregivers. There are, through resources, I would probably call the area agency on aging to see if they might have some resources for that. I know that there are various programs in the Chicago area, not a lot of them, where you can access some transportation. On occasion, you'll find some individuals that's what they're doing. I've got like 1 or 2 people that I know that I can call, that's what they do, is they come in, they will pick up a client from, they come up to the house, help walk the person into the car, drive them to a doctor's appointment or to the grocery store, help them through with the grocery shopping, and then bring them back home and bring the groceries into the house. And if they want, help them put things away. So it's really, but again, it's a fee for service. So it's really trying to find resources in the community.
Okay, thank you.
Even, and I'm just thinking like even contacting your local senior service, your senior centers, may have some resources. Sometimes there are seniors that are helping seniors that volunteer to do that.
Okay, and you just brought up, offices, or the area agency offices. So do you ever work with County Office for Aging? And do they help with these long-term care needs in general?
They do. They have a lot of resources, and it's definitely a great spot to check out.
Okay, great. And I think there's probably, and we can include that up on the email, follow-up email as well. I'm sure there's a kind of a general way to locate these 8 local aging offices, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, they're typically county based. So I think, definitely going online, looking up area agency on aging and identifying which county that you're in your city or, state.
All right. And I know that you guys had such a thorough presentation, so we have just a couple of more questions here. So we'll just end a little bit early, which is totally fine. So there was, and I'm not sure if you can answer this because I'm not 100% sure. So someone submitted during the webinar that they read a recent News Watch tip that a front door handle could have aluminum foil wrapping on the knob to indicate someone living alone. Have you guys ever heard of this? Was this unfounded or a security risk? Is this something that you've ever heard of before? Because I have not.
I've not heard of it. I'm not so sure I would want to identify the fact that I'm living alone in a home.
Yes, I am thinking the same thing, right? So to not identify that, of course, you have your people that you confide in, so they know that if you need someone to check on you and such, but I don't think that I would also want to identify that, that I was living alone. So, and I hadn't heard that, and the person is wondering if you had, and it sounds like you have not. So, so you know what, Lena, I'm going to ask you the last question here. So we've been focusing on home safety from an occupational therapist perspective, but what are other ways that OTs can assist people with Parkinson's? Because there's so many ways. And I feel like it's one of those, it's one of these disciplines out there that people know about, but they don't know about at the same time. I feel like that we just would love for you to share a little bit more knowledge of what an OT can do for someone living with Parkinson's.
Yeah. So I would say kind of that home evaluation and safety is one big facet of it. Another thing we do is work on kind of the physical aspects of it, right? Like talking about balance, coordination, strength, mobility are all things that become more challenging when you have Parkinson's. So those are things we kind of provide individualized programs for to help kind of maintain those physical abilities as long as possible, kind of helping to try out different mobility devices, see what's going to be the safest option for that, and kind of also providing those recommendations for deciding when it's time to have an additional person there to help with that supervision or physical assist, kind of when that's going to be the safest option. And also through kind of that Lsvt program that I mentioned, that certification is something that helps really address some of those physical symptoms like shuffling, walking, small movements, kind of that bent forward posture. If any of those are things you're kind of starting to feel like are becoming difficult, that may be a really beneficial program. There have been really huge positive results from it. So kind of working on all those things are other aspects of what occupational therapists might be addressing.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. So that was our last question. And I did want to just make one more comment. One of our participants watching just mentioned that he runs a Facebook group. So I'm just letting all of our attendees know. He runs a Facebook group for people who are living alone with Parkinson's. So we will include his follow-up contact information for anyone of you watching who might want to become involved in that Facebook page as well, to maybe assist with him and do some postings. It sounds like a great opportunity to engage with other people on this journey. So thank you to that person who submitted that comment. We would love to share your information in the follow-up email. So that concludes our program for today. I really, again, want to thank Debbie Feldman and Lena Menkes for taking the time and sharing their expertise with us and with all of you. We truly appreciate it. And I think your presentations were super helpful. And of course, we want to thank all of you attending the program today. The people living with Parkinson's, you are the people that we do this for. You're the ones who inspire us every day. So thank you so much for joining us today. We will send a follow-up email with a survey. We want to hear how we did today. We always want to know what we did well, what we could do better. And we will also, again, in about a week's time, we'll be sending all the resources that we discussed today, along with the recording of the program. So again, thank you to everyone for joining us today. We hope you have a wonderful day, and join us again for our PD Health at Home programs. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.